Hello and welcome to the Daily Debate Thursdays with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Well, tonight we'll be talking about procedures that has been undertaken by Egypt and the Egyptian government in order to facilitate the educational system in Egypt vis-a-vis the different challenges that had been imposed by the fighting of COVID-19. Since the beginning of coronavirus global threat, Egypt took different strides and measures. Among them was closing schools and universities. Instead, the application of electronic exam systems under the National Project of Digitization and also scientific research has played a very important role in that respect. The leadership on the presidential level and also on the level of the government have been following up with all the developments, with all the measures and also the different procedures. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has directed the government and also the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in order to prioritize building up a strong base of university students with excellent and top-level skills. And this is actually the topic of tonight. How can we bring about those top-level skilled students? How can we encourage them to carry on during this challenging times and also keep up the pace and encourage them in all the avenues of knowledge, especially in scientific areas, strengthening the state's efforts to achieve this sense of comprehensive development. The president also ordered to provide further support for coronavirus-related clinical experiments and researches, and also the different mechanisms of distance learning in universities under the digitization approach. What Egypt had started regarding a very solid foundation in digitization had actually reaped the fruit, because we are reaping the fruit of this system now. Now, more than ever, we are benefiting from e-learning and this solid foundation of achieving digitization and starting up digitizing Egypt. All the honor and pleasure to have with us Dr. Ahmad Abdel Tawwab, Professor of Linguistics at Menoufiya University, who is going to share us with his views and also his experience in e-learning, lecturing all over the world and also in the Arab region. Dr. Abdel Tawwab himself is going to tell us more about the pros and cons of e-learning and how did it like facilitate the whole process with his students and also helped him to transcend barriers and this sense of exposure with professors regionally and internationally. Doctor, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you, Taghreed, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdel Tawwab. And let me know from you, as I was just saying in the introduction, that digitizing Egypt in the first place and having this solid foundation had actually helped us a lot in order to go through this challenging period educational-wise.
Indeed. And as you started our talk today by saying that this is a challenging time, so let me just, before delving into our topic today, let me just send a thank you message. A thank you message for everyone who is working in the medical field, for all the physicians, for all the nurses, for every single person who is exerting efforts, who is working, who is just making hard working in order to make the job done, in order to save our lives and save our country. It's a wake-up call that we are witnessing, and there is nothing but just to say thank you all for all the people working in the medical field, because this is a time to stand united, stand unified, and stand together. So thank you very much. Back again to our topic, digitalization. And as you just said, there is a very, very unique attitude coming from the highest level of our country, the president himself. So he gave directions to all the institutions that this is the right time now to move as fast as we can in order to digitalize every aspect in our life. The question that I have here today, why do we have this concept, digitalization? And what are the benefits? And as you said, what are the pros and probably also the cons? Yeah. But let me just tell you, the answer is it's all about knowledge. It's all about information. It's all about science. This is the time now that science talks. This is the time now for scientists. This is the time today for the experts. This is the time today of information and knowledge. And let me just answer you in another simple way. we have two countries today in the world. We have South Korea and we have Taiwan. Again, South Korea and Taiwan. As you said, we are witnessing challenging times. We have COVID-19, and we are just trying to work hard in order to overcome such a challenging. And in God's willing, we will do it. And so for South Korea, for example, they did succeed in flattening the curve of the virus. This is one of the most successful stories that we have nowadays. And look, on the other hand, to Taiwan. They made everything safe. So they did succeed in overcoming the challenge. How did they do all of that? It's all about by using knowledge, by using electronic system, and by spreading the awareness. The president gave directions in order to digitalize all the services. Why? Because we would like to save the efforts and time. We would like to make the services available for each one in our society. We would like to make the services efficient in our community. And the most critical part is to fight and combat corruption.
Yes.
Corruption, this is something loosey. I mean, you cannot just probably catch it up. So the only and the possible way to surround such a phenomenon that we have in the world today is by using digitalization. And
yes.
One example probably I would remember, if I would like to go and process some official papers in some institutions or agencies, there is no need nowadays to go to such agencies. I do everything electronically, and I do have the personal experience for issuing my ID card electronically, and it worked easily and in no time. So again, one of the critical and probably one of the strategic points that we have when it comes to digitalization is to fight corruption. And well, of course, we have different strategies here. And we've been talking about artificial intelligence, smart universities. We've been talking about creative techniques for education. Now, this is the high time now to talk about that. So in the past, it was something that we were talking about, but today, this is the time to apply this.
Yes, time to apply this, and we always need those students who are top skilled and the potential of those students who are creative. So amidst all those challenges, we need to keep those students going. And the president has given directives in that respect, that we have to follow up on the creative skills of the youth of today and keep up directing them towards this area. While building on the strong base of university students and making use of their potential and further enhancing their skills. What does it take today, and how can we make digitization support us in this cause?
I think that this speaks volume. It indicates that there is a strategic vision that Egypt already has when it comes to collecting and building a baseline for all the skilled students and for all the talented people. So nowadays we are working on having a very connected network in order to collect all of them. And why do we have this? Why we are just gathering all the talented people? Because it is the time now of creativity. It is the time now of innovation. It's the time now of knowledge. And Egypt is just working through all of such steps. Let me just give you one example here. Nowadays, in the past, we used to have a regular service for the internet. Today, we have a very high speed for the internet. Before I come here, I read the statistics, and it says that the number of internet users in Egypt increased during the past 6 months. It increased from 38 million users to 42 million users. The number of internet users is increasing day after day. It means that we are just moving to electronic systems. Some people probably say, well, come on, we are talking about the electronic systems, but some people are illiterate probably. They cannot read and write. Even if they cannot read and write, but there are smart applications that can help everyone in order to use the applications electronically. Back again to the point of talented, because we were talking about steps. So there is also very huge budget that is dedicated for the annual budget of Egypt's government. Around 7.8 billion Egyptian pounds are just dedicated and devoted just for the information technology. We have increasing number of the internet users, and the most critical part, and I guess that this is something very positive, I read that major companies in the world, IBM company and Google company, both of them, they decided to open an office branch here in Cairo. What does it mean? It means that Egypt again is becoming an electronic and a digitalized hub, not just in the Middle East, but in Africa.
Yes.
According to the number of statistics, probably the highest country in the Middle East today when it comes to electronic users and electronic devices, it's United Arab Emirates. Egypt is just ranked second, but it's just moving fast to take the top position in a very, very few time.
Yes, moving fast is a word that gives a sense of optimism, and we need to move fast in that direction because it is going to be a worldwide technique that we resort to. Doctor, talking about His Excellency the President encouraging also support for clinical experiments regarding vis-a-vis researches also for fighting COVID-19 and providing support in that respect. Talking also scientific research and the encouraging of the youth. We remember that during the different world forums that Egypt used to hold, and inshallah in the future will be also holding, the main focus was to have our youth today considering scientific research, to work according to science, to be aware of the importance of science and technology in our life.
Well, and I think that this is also very significant to talk about. But let me just also give you another different hint here. We've been talking about scientific education, science and knowledge, and how can we make all the people to be using electronic and digitalized. Today, there is a new term in our society which is called digitalization or digitalized transformation. When I just say transformation, I mean by that there is a radical change happening in the roots of our society, that there is a dramatic change happening here. But let me just also tell you something, Tagreed, something quite a bit interesting as well, and that indicates, that reflects Egypt's vision for 2030 when it comes to education. And I keep talking about education because this is my field. Today, there is the Higher Council for Artificial Intelligence. There is a Higher Council for Electronic Commerce. There is a Higher Council for Information Technology Institutions and Universities. So again, there are a lot of councils here that probably focus on the idea of information technology. But there is something, because we were talking about the pros and cons, well, probably one of the negative aspects, and I wouldn't recommend that this is very serious, but one of the things here that I would recommend, it is all about the awareness of the people. Sometimes people are not aware about how important it is. Some people probably lag behind. They say, no, this is not our time now. We should use the traditional and the regular way, and there is no benefit at all. No, that's wrong. So number one, probably the key point that I have here in my mind, it is awareness. Spreading the awareness and trying to make people aware about how important it is for such time, especially our current time. So this is something very important. The other thing, because we were talking about electronic learning style and distance learning and far learning style, we have to understand that we should have very specific steps here. So number one, changing the syllabi. So that the regular syllabi that we used to have in the past, that doesn't work nowadays. The mindset should change as well. So it's not just about the mindset, it's all about the curriculum. It's all about the syllabi that we have in schools and colleges and universities. And then the other thing here is just to update the content. Updating the content in order to go in accordance with the latest challenge that we have nowadays. Training the teachers and the professors.
Training the coaches.
All of them, with no exception. I mean, we should have that sense of regular training and regular workshops all the time. But it's not just about training the professors and the teachers, but it's also training the parents. They are responsible for what's going on nowadays. And finally, the final step, it's all about also the following up process. And we can just find some successful countries that did succeed in that. I look all the time with admiration when it comes to South Korea, when it comes to Japan. So I think that for such steps, if we just follow, I think that we can work, and I think that there is a plan already nowadays in order to make it very successful, either from the Minister of Education, led by the Minister, Dr. Tariq Shawqi, or from the Minister of Education by Dr. Abdel Ghaffar. There is a vision, there is a plan, and Egypt is determined to make the plan successful.
Yes, Egypt is determined to make the plan successful, and follow-up is very important to make this plan quite successful. That's why His Excellency is always following up his directives to be implemented on solid grounds. How Egypt today is set to open a new generation also of new universities serving as home for new technologies, which are going to be very beneficial in the future, and also probing higher education developmental projects vis-a-vis combating COVID-19. Let's watch.
اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت آخذ بناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi probed on Monday the higher education and scientific research development process and contributions to efforts to combat the novel coronavirus pandemic. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that President al-Sisi held a meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Higher Education and Scientific Research Minister Khaled Abdel Ghaffar to consider improving the sectors of scientific research and higher education. The meeting touched upon the application of electronic exam systems under the National Project of Digitization and the role of the scientific research and higher education sector to help the state counter the COVID-19 spread. The President directed to prioritize building up a strong base of university students with excellent and top-level skills in all avenues of knowledge, especially in scientific areas such as physics, engineering, computer science and medicine, to strengthen the state's efforts for achieving comprehensive development in all fields. The President also ordered to provide further support for coronavirus-related clinical experiments and researchers and the mechanisms of distance learning in universities under the digitization approach. President al-Sisi directed to stick to precautionary measures of social distancing and disinfection of all university facilities to protect the health and save the lives of all students and employees. On his part, Dr. Abdel Ghaffar reviewed the efforts exerted by university hospitals to curb the pandemic outbreak. The minister also shed light on the application of remote learning in universities and electronic exam systems.
Well, we are talking still about education and about scientific research and about the different challenges vis-a-vis fighting COVID-19. However, based on scientific research, there is always a way out. Egypt is working on opening a new generation of universities. Egypt is working also on the potential of the youth today, which is very important. That was what we were discussing, right. Professor Ahmed. And during Ramadan, we did see together how the Egyptian youth actually were very much interested in the soft power, right. and how like a soap opera like Al-Ikhtiyar or The Choice, right. did bring right. people together, right. For the love of their country, for the sense of belonging to this country. Right. So those are also lessons taught.
Right, right. I think so. I think that we were talking about this topic before that reflects Egypt's soft power. And believe it or not, I found people, they were so much affected, not just inside Egypt, but also outside Egypt in different countries in the Middle East. And I stick to my guns and keep on saying that Egypt's soft power is tremendously influential across history. We have to remember what happened to President Gamal Abdel Nasser when he traveled to Morocco. And Moroccans were just sending a message through the president, through the Egyptian president, to the famous actor Ismail Yassin, telling the president, please say hello to Ismail Yassin. People are fascinated by every single aspect when it comes to the artistic side, the historical side. So soap operas, for example, are very, very efficient tool when it comes to the way of influence and affecting.
Yes.
And I think that as we were talking about the soft power, this is the indirect way of how can you make the influence and the affection on the people. And I guess that this is one of the successful ways, and because at the end, this is the time now to motivate the youth. We would like, the youth today, they are looking for a role model. We were talking about Captain Mohamed Salah in the football. Yes. People were looking at him as a model. So people today, they need a model. Mm-hmm. They need a model in sports, they need a model in education, they need a model in science, but they need a role model. Now the question is, how can we put up, or how can we just make something happening, or to be clear for the audience as a role model? This is our job, to motivate, to influence, to encourage the youth. And I have a strong belief that youth, that they are the cornerstone for any kind of renaissance or any kind of civilization for Egypt.
Yes, definitely. The youth are considered to be a cornerstone for this sense of development. And also what was interesting is that we found different tweets, thousands of tweets on Facebook that were saluting Martyr Al-Mansi and his martyrdom story, how they were very much affected by his sense of sacrifice and the sense of sacrifices that the Egyptian army are giving every day for this nation, the shield of the nation. A big salute to the Egyptian army. Short break. So as we were mentioning that those soap operas like The Choice or L'Ikhtiyar that has portrayed the sacrifices of the Egyptian army are very important, Dr. Ahmed, in enhancing the sense of belonging of the youth to their country and the nation. It's very important to know what their army is doing for the country, and also to follow suit.
Right, and I think again, this is again related to the awareness. Mm-hmm. This is something related to the knowledge. Knowledge is the key word. This is related to making our education to be creative and innovative. So it is, it's not a vicious circle, but it's an interconnected circle, as a matter of fact. And let me just tell you here something, because we were talking about what's happening in the world post-COVID-19 era. In my humble opinion, and again, this is my opinion, the most affected part in our society when it comes to digitalization during the time of COVID-19, it's education. Education, in my humble opinion, it is building up the mindsets of the people. It builds new generation that can build the country after that. Education, and if we just look at education, it is connected with every sector in our country. Mm-hmm. It's connected with tourism, it's connected with security, it's connected with businesses and commerce. So if we would like to create, if we would like to make any sense of inclusive and comprehensive development, it starts with education. One of the points that I got during the time of COVID-19, it's how can you be connected not just locally or inside your place, but regionally and internationally. And we were talking during the break, Reed, about my lectures, not just inside Egypt, but my lectures, my training workshops also outside Egypt.
Yeah, this is very important, transcending barriers, and how our professors today having this sense of exposure and exchange of information and knowledge through technology.
Absolutely right. And I think that this is our duty nowadays. It is how can you expose yourself to the others, trying to be positive when it comes to spreading knowledge. A few days ago, I was invited by Iraqi universities and by some academic institutions to deliver lectures and workshops. And believe it or not, it worked. It worked in a way that is professional, and it was very, very successful. And I wouldn't imagine that from my office room, by using my laptop, I was giving a lecture to more than 400 or 500, and sometimes it was exceeding 2,000 students in another country, exceeding the borders.
Yes.
This is one of the positives, one of the, I would say, the enlightening aspects when it comes to using technology.
Yeah. How are we going to build on such experiences so that it would not only be restricted for the time being while we are fighting COVID-19, but how can we would make it like a style for life, in your opinion?
I think, Tagreed, they are repeating nowadays, they are just saying, there is a famous and a repeated statement. It says the world after COVID-19 will not be the same as it was before COVID-19. And I strongly believe in that. There is something here happening in our society nowadays. People are using every aspect related to the social media because they don't have any other choice. And the point here, it is how can we put a strategic plan and how can we put a vision as well in order to make people interact. There is something happening on the ground, but people should be aware about what's going on in our country nowadays. And let me just give you one example. There is today the National Academy for Information Technology for those people who are with disabilities. So there is, and such academy is responsible for sponsoring and supervising all the technological universities. We're going to have the first technological university in the new administrative capital that is supposed to be inaugurated next academic year. It's going to be the first of its kind information technology university, not just in the Middle East, but in Africa. So this is something quite a bit positive to mention. There are today a plan to create creativity centers in every campus in our universities. Why creativity? Because again, we need creative people who probably can just create unusual. I keep talking about how can we think out of the box, because this is what we need nowadays.
Yes, resorting to e-learning and resorting to online classes has been really important. Resorting to technology today has facilitated a lot of effort. And how about the student-professor relationship? Are there pros and cons, definitely, concerning the whole story?
Right. I think, yes, there are pros and cons, and that's probably could be classified and described as one of the pros and cons classification or categorization. When it comes to the con side, because some people say that we miss that kind of intimate relationship. Probably there is no very accurate assessment and evaluation for the education process. But again, on the other hand, everything is just calculated by the positives and the negatives. If we just look at the pros and what are the positive aspects that we can just see by using technological devices and using digitalized systems, I think it's going to be something tangibly successful. It's, as I said before, it saves the time and the efforts. It makes the online classes to be efficient. Time today has changed from the past. It's not as it was before. I read a very, very important latest news coming from United Kingdom, and it says that the University of Cambridge, they decided for the next year to make all classes online. They're going to make all the classes online. And today in Egypt, there is a serious thinking of just how can we change the educational process totally and ultimately to be on the online system. So again, when it comes to the positives and the negatives, I'm going to go for the positives side because this is the only option that we have in order to make our country competitive. We are talking about competitiveness because we have a target at the end. Why do we have all of such processes? Because we wanted to make our graduates at the end to have competitive level of education, competitive level of practical knowledge in order to be adaptable to the international and the global market opportunities.
Yes, glad that you've mentioned market opportunities because we need to graduate students today who have all the power to compete. And who would feed this sense of market opportunities and be up as a caliber for that. How are we training our students today and preparing them for being great labor, I guess?
Right. I think that there is already today a plan to make, number one is to spread the awareness, as I said before, but there is also something else regarding competitiveness, because this is quite a bit important. Egypt has a plan not just to make the graduates to be competitive on the local level or regional level, but also on the international level. Just a few days ago, I was talking with some of my students. They were talking about how to communicate with international major corporations and companies in order to build an online exchanging and mutual relationship between the students and the major companies. So the world today is open for that. There is also something else that we are looking for, which is to what extent we can just create a high level of transparency. That happens again by using such digitalized concepts. There is also another different way, and this is very strategic, which is decentralization. We don't want to make everything centralized as we used to have that before, but every university, I just read a statement from the Minister of Higher Education. The minister was just giving instructions to all the universities presidents just to build up their own visions and the strategy. In every governmental university, there is a strategy to go forward and to overcome such challenges. So again, there are different points here when it comes to transparency, when it comes to decentralization. At the end, our target, it is how can we just make the graduates, those students who are graduating from different colleges, to compete with the international standards when it comes to the global job opportunities.
Yes, and definitely it is going also to help vis-a-vis the portrayal of the opportunities that Egypt offers. For instance, we do have great projects all over the country. You mentioned the new administrative capital. I would love also to add here Bashir al-Khair, that recent project that we are all proud of, that His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has inaugurated recently, and it is giving hope. This is the issue. We give hope for making the quality of life for Egyptians better. So giving hope is very important. How those slum areas has been today transformed into decent shelters and decent apartments for them to lead a living. Education is very important. The sense of awareness is very important. And also having this new generation that is having a sense of belonging to the country. How can we make use of the knowledge of the youth in such huge projects that Egypt is implementing today?
I think one of the strategic ways here is to use the soft power techniques. We were talking about the artistic side. I think that people today, they need to read more about the history of their country. They should be more engaged and more involved. And I think that this is the responsibility also of everyone in the country, including all the officials. We would like to make something like a comprehensive plan to engage everyone and making it in a very direct and very open dialogue. There is something very critical here when it comes to the dialogue, because sometimes there was something missed. There was like a gap between the students from one hand and all the officials from the other hand. Today, our situation is different. So there is a direct contact that we probably can just find between the students from one hand and all the officials. In a very simple way, you can just I just read on the website of the Ministry of Higher Education, it's a clear message for everyone, not just for the students, but also for the professors, that if you have any comment, if you have any suggestion, please write an email and we will reply back. Can you imagine that? I believe in putting a vision, and when it comes to, for example, Egypt's vision for the future, look to one initiative. I consider that this is very, very important initiative. As a matter of fact, it is the initiative of Study in Egypt.
Yes, very,
Study in
very
Egypt.
interesting.
It was launched by the Ministry of Higher Education. There is a plan to bring, nowadays we have in Egypt around 8,000 international students. There is an expectation to have the doubling number, so to be like 15,000 students studying in Egypt in order to market the country for the first point, and at the same time that to create that sense of solid bonding between the students inside Egypt and the students outside Egypt.
Yes, this sense of solid bonding between the students inside Egypt and the students of outside Egypt is very important. Also, this sense of solid bonding between the youth and their country, this sense of solid bonding between Egyptians and their leadership has been definitely portrayed in the way how they see how the face of life is changing in this country. Bashir al-Khair was a great example. It was a great omen. It was like a Bashir al-Khair. We call it here like Bushra al-Khair. It's always a good omen, and better things are coming for this country. So Allahu Akbar al nafis wal fakkar, Allahu Akbar al nafis, which means like Allahu Akbar on every hand that did work hard to achieve more for this country, to change the face of life for this country, to increase productivity, to help the poor and to uplift them, to change slum areas into decent way of living so that they would turn to be Bashayr al-Khair. Let's watch.
لنا شقه اللي هي متجهزه من مجاميعه وهنقعد فيها، هتبقى راحه لينا احسن من ان احنا قاعدين فيه ده. كله عزه وكبرياء.
سيسي نجدنا من اللي احنا فيه، احنا قاعدين في مشاكل، عايزين يشوفوا لنا حته ندخل هنا. اللي قلبه تملي ابيض قلب خالي من لما عمل لنا مساكن احنا فرحنا.
بكفاحنا ونضلنا ايدينا شغاله للحمل حماله ووقفنا رجاله وربنا نصرنا. الله الله واللي فكر واللي جاي عشان يعمر كله عزه وكبرياء.
دي خطوة من 1000 خطوة.
Yes, as the president says, it's one step out of 1,000 steps. We're moving in the right direction, and definitely among those 1,000 steps is like upgrading education and the infrastructure, the educational system, our universities. How about this series of universities that Egypt is building today for the future? And the syllabi in those universities is definitely going to be different.
Right, right. As I mentioned before, that there is a strategic plan to build technological universities in every place, because there is a deep understanding about how critical and how important it is to consider that for the future directions. So this is that can be part of the visionary attitude that probably Egypt is just working on nowadays. So it is, as I said before, it is interconnected circle. It's not just one part or one side, but it's more than one point that gathered together in order to push the country forward. It is how to develop the skills of the students from one hand. It is how to develop the skills of those who are working in every field, not just in education, but as I said before, education is the core point here because it affects every single aspect in our lifetime. And if we just put education with the awareness, then we can just, there is something today happening in our society, which is the digitalized world. I have my students, for example, and nowadays they are working, they are creating, they are building up their online electronic businesses. So the concept of working nowadays, it's different from the past. The spread of information today, we have a very critical center, which is called the Bank of Knowledge. Bank of Knowledge is considered among the most strategic tools that we have nowadays. If you would like just to read any sort or any kind of research paper in any journal, you probably can just find an access for that by using the Bank of Knowledge. So there is a vision here. And I think that by having other different points, like for example, media can play an important role here.
Definitely.
In order to increase the awareness. And by just talking about the awareness, we are talking about our identity, we are talking about our history, we are talking about our philosophy for who we are and what kind of achievements that we can just do nowadays. There is something happening positive in our society, and I think that when it comes to, we should spotlight on that. The youngsters today, they need that. They need that sense of having support. They need that sense of having role models. They need that sense of talking with the officials in order to make their concerns be discussed. And I think that, as I mentioned before, that the world in the after COVID-19 stage is totally and completely different from the past. This is the time now of science. This is the time now of listening to the experts and listening to the scholars. So, and I think that the world today is dramatically changing. And I think also we are witnessing such a change, but for the positives at the end, because at the end, Egypt, this is our dream to make Egypt on the right track.
Yes, our dream to make Egypt on the right track, and through the hands of the youth, Egypt is on the right track. Through building up this sense of creative youth. And it was a very catchy headline how it was the directives of the president to further develop the skills of the youth and to have those youth who are always encouraging this sense of creativity, who have creative ideas. From your eyes as a professor, what would be a creative environment that is going to bring about those creative skills?
Well, you know, one of the ways that I used to apply with my students is just to go out of the box. There is something very important to consider here, is just to motivate. This is very important.
Motivation, so one of the keys.
Right. It's motivating the students in a very, very sincere way in order to push them forward. And students today are very smart. So they can see that sense of motivation, and they can also see that sense of passion as well. Passion, this is the secret word that we have.
So we have like two keywords here. To motivate and to have a passion for what you're doing.
And then we can also make the student to think critically out of the box. So go out of the traditional ways.
How can they think critically? If I'm a student today,
Right.
and you're encouraging me to think critically, how can I do that?
Well, I think that number one is just to give him or her the responsibility for making a decision. If you just let him or her make a decision or create something like critical decisions, in this way they will have critical thinking style.
Yes, so have a sense of belief in oneself.
Right, right. This is very important. Give them the self-confidence. When they have the self-confidence for what they are doing, you're going to see something creative and something innovative out of the box. Explain to them what are the positives and the negatives in a very transparent way. Telling them that if we just do that, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we don't do that, then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4.
So transparency and objectivity.
Here we go. So it's a transparency. It's the self-confidence that you create for all of them. It is the passion and motivation. If you just put all of these elements together, they will feel that. They will see that on their professor, on their teacher, and in this way they can be motivated. Because at the end, as I mentioned before, they need a motivation. And during such tough times, and you start our talk today by talking about challenging times. Yes, we are witnessing challenging times, and there is no other option but just to increase the sense of optimism, the sense of hope, and building up dreams.
Yes, very important to have this sense of hope and also have this sense of passion for what you're doing. Do what you're doing with a sense of passion. To believe in oneself is very important, to be self-confident. And also for the professors and the coaches also to translate that in this sense of giving this push and raising the morale of their students so that they can bring the best out of them. Bringing the best out of their students is an art.
It's an art, it's a skill, it's a passion. It's a number of elements together. So I would say that, but the key point here is the passion of how you just get the best features out of all of them. And if we just do that, and if we just have a systematic way of putting that and making them confident and aware about what's going on, I'm sure that they will do something unusual, something different, and something creative, right?
Yes. This sense of bringing something unconventional around Professor Abdel Tawwab, talking about how the students would be also working on themselves. It's very important that you would work on your strong points. And for the coach or the professor to know more about those strong points and starting to develop them. Also making use of their potential and helping them out to work in teams. So do we have creative ideas while students are working in teams? Right.
It's called the teamwork culture. One of the things nowadays, because we are asking the students to submit research papers. So there is no need now to go for exams, face-to-face exams, and all of such regular exams. So we ask them, as a matter of fact, to submit research. One of the things that they or one of the options that they probably can have ahead is just to work together and to have that sense of teamwork culture.
Collaboration.
Absolutely. So it is the collaboration, it is the cooperation as well, it is the way of working together, it's the way of exchanging the information, it is the way of helping each other. Now, we are not just giving the students education, but we are trying to change their attitudes. We are trying to build the skills. We are building new generation, and that wouldn't happen in a regular way.
Yes, it always, irregular things always happen during challenging times, and this is what we are saying here, that focus on positivity, focus on what brings positivity into your lives, and also try to work more on your skills and strengthening those skills for the future. I thank so much, Dr. Ahmad Abdel Tawwab, Professor of Linguistics at Montefiore University, for joining us here on the Daily Debate Thursdays with Taghreed Hussein. Thank you so much, Doctor, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
And thank you, dear viewers, for joining us on the Daily Debate Thursdays. Tonight, stay positive, Stay safe until I see you again. It's a good night.